Ares was the one to actually wound Darkseid in the DCEU in Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League. Of course, this was back before Darkseid was calling himself Darkseid, back when he was Uaxis, and back when he was less powerful. But he was still a version of Darkseid, albeit a younger one, and Ares still beat him fair and square in a one-on-one combat. In fact, he beat him so badly that he was forced to retreat, and eventually his armies fell and the whole invasion was forced to retreat as well as a result of his defeat. Now, it is important to note that in our flashback to this moment, we also see that Darkseid was likely weakened not just by Ares, but by the armies of Earth prior to Ares' attack on him. So yeah, it was kinda one-on-one, but before that it was like a bunch of people on one. However, Ares is also the god of war, so when going toe-to-toe with him, facing armies as well is just kinda the norm. Number 9. Solaris. Solaris might stand a chance against Darkseid, considering he's literally just a sentient sun. Typically his beef is with Superman, but if there were a reason for Solaris to take on Darkseid, I'm sure he'd stand a pretty good chance of beating him in a fight. It would be his intense radiation and laser beams versus Darkseid's Omega beams. Considering that Solaris is also an adaptable villain who can scan and process an attack and then use that information to create a powerful defense against it, this also means there are very few attacks that happen to be powerful enough to destroy him, unless you can like destroy him outright with that first attack. This is also why Solaris makes such a great recurring villain. Maybe Darkseid would beat him even the first time around, but Solaris would likely still survive because he's just so resilient and indestructible, and he'd likely return years later for a rematch. And before we move on to this next spot, if you are enjoying this list and you want more lists like it, be sure to show us some love by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Necron. Necron is the embodiment of death, an extra-dimensional being who often seeks to conquer the universe. He has attempted to do so a few times and failed, but during Blackest Night we saw him come fairly close to accomplishing his goal. If not for the presence of the White Lantern, he would have likely succeeded. During that event we also saw Necron's power level boosted, turning him into a massive threat to not just Earth but all of the universe. The other thing is that Necron is a constant and as such can't really be permanently killed at any point. As long as death exists, he technically must exist as well. Even without the boost to his power levels that we saw in Blackest Night, Necron has still managed to take hits from the Anti-Monitor without so much as flinching. That's just how untouchable he is. Number 7. Superboy Prime. Just because Superman can't take Darkseid alone doesn't mean that another version of the character couldn't stand a fighting chance. Superboy Prime, or Superman Prime as he is often referred to now, might not have the physical strength, but it could be possible that he could manipulate reality to make Darkseid weaker or even cause him to just not exist. How? With just a punch. There was a time in the comics where Superboy Prime was shown to be so strong that he punched reality, splintering it and in essence reshaping it. If Superboy Prime has the power to punch retcons into existence, what can't he do? Number 6. Volthoom. Volthoom is the very first Lantern who, after receiving the very first Lantern ring from the Guardians of the Universe, turned dark, losing control of all the emotions within himself. Or maybe he was a little dark even before that. He killed millions of people and enjoys sowing discord and creating chaos. At one point he also almost succeeded in taking hold of the universe and reshaping it in his own image. It took the collective power of Parallax Sinestro, Necron, and a Black Lantern Hal Jordan to stop him. He can warp reality, manipulate time, and has increased durability. He's taken on an army of Black Lanterns all by himself and at one point was powerful enough to hold the universe in his hand. I'm pretty sure if there is anyone who could take on Darkseid solo, it would be Volthoom. Number 5. Starro the Conqueror. Starro is a frightening enemy. Not only is there the potential for Starro to simply take hold of Darkseid and use him as a pawn, which we have actually seen pictured in the Future State Justice League series in issue 1, but you can have a Starro that could be up to thousands of miles across. Their sizes greatly vary, meaning that you could have a Starro simply capable of crushing Darkseid if it wanted to. Though honestly, taking his mind hostage and using him as a weapon for its own purpose is a far more terrifying prospect. Not just for our heroes, but I imagine for Darkseid as well. Number 4. The Darkest Night. I never thought I'd consider Batman Who Laughs laughs to be such a powerful threat, but after he took the brain of final Bruce Wayne, who basically had the powers of Dr. Manhattan, he became one of the most powerful beings in the universe. True, he was defeated by Wonder Woman, but if we can imagine a scenario outside of Dark Knight's death metal, where with his newly acquired power he squared off with Darkseid, it would be easy to see how he could win against that villain. With Dr. Manhattan's abilities, there would be almost no feat of power too great for him to accomplish. In his Darkest Night form, the Batman who laughs became invulnerable and immortal, which would also make it very hard for Darkseid to not only wound him, but defeat him as well. Number 3. Anti-Monitor. Many consider the Anti-Monitor to be one of DC's greatest threats. It usually comes down to either Anti-Monitor or Darkseid when you ask fans who is the most powerful and fearsome antagonist of the DC universe. The thing with Anti-Monitor is most of his stories have included threatening not just multiple worlds, but entire multiverses. So compared to Darkseid, he's generally on another scale. And not just in terms of threats and power, but also just in terms of actual size. Darkseid is typically shown as being an intimidating height, but only really in comparison to other superpowered beings and humans. He's like anywhere from a few feet taller to double their size. Anti-Monitor, on the other hand, is generally depicted as being hundreds of feet tall. So unless we are giving Darkseid a major boost to his size, Anti-Monitor could just squish him like a bug. Of course, we did give Darkseid a major boost to his size when the two fought, but even then Darkseid ended up dying. Of course, it wasn't Anti-Monitor who caused his apparent death, but it still happened while they were fighting, so hey, I'm counting it. Number 2. Perpetua. Perpetua is also likely a character who could take Darkseid, considering that she has destroyed entire alternate Earths before and even managed to break the Source Wall. Pretty impressive and terrifying stuff. Perpetua, for those who don't know, is an agent of the Source who went rogue. Initially, she was on a mission of creation, but instead decided to turn to the side of chaos and destruction, with a plan to remake the multiverse in her own image. Some might think that Perpetua isn't so scary or strong, considering she has only been shown to destroy a single universe at a time. But in reality, when we saw her wreaking havoc in death metal, she was not yet back to her full strength. If Perpetua was back at her max strength of power, there's no telling just how much destruction she could bring about within an instant. Number 1. Trigon. In the animated film Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, we saw just what Trigon was capable of in the fight against Darkseid. And I know what you're thinking, how is Trigon more powerful than Perpetua, Amanda? But I'm giving this one to him because of this fight. Raven accidentally lost control of Trigon and set him loose on Apocalypse. Trigon in the film at least was shown to be strong enough to match Darkseid in power, if not beat him. Initially, that's because Trigon possessed Superman, using him as a host to fight Darkseid, but afterwards Raven and Constantine team up to give Trigon back his own body, realizing that he is the key to defeating Darkseid, giving them enough time to escape back to Earth and enact Cyborg's plan to destroy Apocalypse. When Trigon gets his body back, he poses a very real threat to Darkseid, to the point that at one point Darkseid attempts to basically run away, but Trigon does not let him. As Apocalypse is destroyed, so are both of the villains, as Trigon holds Darkseid back, preventing him from fleeing, which I love. I love that they fight and then Darkseid's like, I'm getting out of here, and Trigon's like, oh no, we're going together.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have the Absorbing Man. Carl Crusher Creel already sounds intimidating enough. The Absorbing Man made his comic book debut back in Journey into Mystery issue 114. He was raised in the Bronx, and at a young age his mother passed away, and his father certainly wasn't there for him after. He was not a role model as well, to say the least. So sadly, Carl turned to the life of crime in order to pay the bills. And while he was spending time in the gym, he realized he was actually a pretty great boxer. He did so well that he became known as Crusher Creel, but that life of crime was still sprinkled in there, and then he was recruited as an enforcer for the Owl's Men. He eventually got caught and locked up, but this is when things start going a little bit fun in a way. See, Loki, Loki's a god of mischief, he added this rare Asgardian herb to Carl's drinking water in hopes that he would get this new ability to take down Thor. Now, this new ability made him the Absorbing Man, a guy who could absorb the physical properties of anybody that he came into contact with. His first battle was with Thor, and then when he came back to Earth, he went toe-to-toe with the Hulk. I'd love an Absorbing Man in the MCU, honestly. I feel like I could watch 2 movies with Carl just fist bumping all of our Avengers and causing chaos, taking powers, of course. course. And before we go on to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and toss this video a thumbs up, that would be great because those likes do wonders for our page. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Now back to some more Hulk villains. Number 9, Speed Freak. Making his first debut in Incredible Hulk issue 388, Speed Freak aka Joss Shapp was a criminal who at one point got addicted to the substance called Snap. Oh snap. This plus the fact that he stole a super suit from an inventor sounds like a perfect supervillain origin story in the making. So Speed Freak had been hired by a man named Mr. Lang, and one of his first jobs was to attack a guy who had infected Mr. Lang's son. So Speed Freak went to fight it out, and while there, he had the misfortune of crossing paths with the Incredible Hulk, who tossed Speed Freak quite the distance. So his suit alone gives Speed Freak quite the advantage. It gives him the ability to hover above the ground, flying, literally being able to fly, and he also has arm-mounted adamantium cutting blades, so he might be a bit too crazy for the MCU, at least right now. Number 8, The Leader. Samuel Stearns, aka The Leader, made his first debut in Tales to Astonish, issue 62. He was working one night at a chemical research plant, and when he was moving canisters of waste material, one of the containers, bam, they broke open and then covered him in gamma radiation. Stearns survived just like Banner did, but it affected him in a different way. He went from being smart to becoming a genius, and his brain could absorb more and more information. It was his superpower. And it got to a point where his physical body started to mutate, so now he has this giant green brain head. I mean, he clearly looks like a villain, and then he started to refer to himself as the Leader, using his intellect to become a criminal mastermind. He clashed with the other Gamma guy, Banner. In fact, he actually ruined Betty and Bruce's wedding. What a jerk. Number 7, Greg Gargoyle. He made his first comic book debut with Journey into Mystery issue 107. Greg Gargoyle, aka Dr. Paul Duval, was a young chemist working for a pharmaceutical company in Paris, and when he spilt a contaminated potion on his right hand, it started to turn into this stone-like material. Not like Medusa though, where you're stone and immobile. Dr. Greg Gargoyle McGee was actually able to move whilst maintaining the stone form. So he looks scary and he actually can do some damage. But everything he touched turned into this stone stuff. And it's super scary to have this happen, but I can't help but chuckle at how human Greg is when this transformation happens. He's like, oh no, my hand. Oh no, my other hand. Shoot, what do I do? Oh no, my face. That's like when they said you shouldn't touch your face during COVID-19. I'm like, what do I do with my hands? How do I act normal? What have I been doing for 26 years? What's going on? So Greg has a few good ideas with this ability. He tossed a stone airplane at his enemies, so that's a cool thing he can do. And then in the Incredible Hulk issue 363, Greg uses his powers to take down the Hulk. It's not easy, but it sure makes it easier when the Hulk is literally stoned during the fight. Number 6, Nightmare. Making his first debut back in Strange Tales issue 110, Nightmare's origin remains a mystery, and it's only known to few. He's both a conceptual entity, part of all of existence, just like eternity, and he's also a deity. So the guy's just trouble. He's just trouble. He was born in the Ever and I dimension, and he was seen as a cousin to the Dweller in Darkness. He knew Dweller's origins. He wanted no part in all that stuff. Nightmare has crossed paths with the Hulk many times. At one point, he caused the Hulk to have these hallucinations, and of course, he had nightmares for years, because his name's Nightmare. You get it. Even Betty Ross, Bruce's love, isn't safe from Nightmare. Nightmare once entered her mind and did horrible things to her while she was dreaming. He's kind of like Freddy Krueger, and seeing as WandaVision didn't want to bring in Nightmare when they had a good chance to, it's probably best if the Hulk and Betty never met him as well. Number 5, Ravage. Dr. Geoffrey Crawford was a professor of physics at Desert State University and was a mentor to Bruce Banner initially. See, Crawford was developing this teleportation device where point A would scan all of your DNA and then zoom, your DNA would end up on the other end. Sounds like nothing could ever go wrong at all in that thing. So Banner went back to Crawford in hopes that he could help him think of a solution for his big green alter ego problem. And then when Bruce got there, Crawford was in a wheelchair and he was suffering from a disease, but he still opted out to help Bruce with his problem. What a nice guy. Turns out Crawford wanted Bruce's DNA in hopes of curing his debilitating disease, but while testing out his theory, he warped to point B and then the DNA had bonded with him, creating this other type of Hulk called Ravage. And because Bruce tried to stop him during this, his DNA meshed together while he was angry, so you already know what that looks like. Number 4, Red Hulk. He made his first appearance in Incredible Hulk issue 1 as General Ross, but come the first issue of volume 2, Ross goes beast mode and becomes one of the Hulk's greatest threats of all time. Red Hulk was created using gamma radiation, like the Hulk, but what makes him more of a foe is the fact that he also has cosmic rays added to that already aggressive mix. So the Red Hulk, or Rolk, which is fun to say, doesn't get stronger the angrier he gets like Bruce. No, he actually gets hotter. Yeah, he gets so hot and then all of a sudden he turns into Ryan Gosling. No, like heat. He physically burns up, that's what I mean. So during one of the first run-ins with the Red Hulk, when the two Goliaths were scrapping it out, the sand around them melted because of this heat and turned into glass, which is pretty cool. More stuff to break too, which you gotta love if you're the Hulk. Number 3, Juggernaut. Kane Marco made his first comic book appearance in X-Men issue 12. Kane and Charles Xavier were serving together in the same unit, but when Kane was under fire, he ran off to take cover in a nearby cave. Now this cave was actually home to the lost temple of Sidorak, so Kane grabbed this glowing ruby from the lap of an idol, which is a great idea if you've seen every movie. He read the inscription and possessed the power of the crimson bands of Sidorak, becoming a human Juggernaut. Then an explosion went off, poof, and the Juggernaut was trapped under the rubble and Xavier got out of dodge. Now after he dug himself out, he destroyed an entire village with the previous man who held the Juggernaut title, Gentaiko, in the mix as well. While it might be cool to see Juggernaut and the Hulk fight in live action, we also have to get the X-Men there first, and it doesn't seem like Marvel is in a rush to bring them in, as we saw from WandaVision. Hashtag Ralph Boner. In World War Hulk and X-Men issue 2, we see these two magnificent beasts go at it, and they're both pretty close in strength, but what makes Kane hard to fight is the fact that he can last some time without needed rest. His stamina is nuts. He can also summon his armor at any time, so that certainly comes in handy. Number 2, Wendigo. This next one comes from Canada, so we gotta keep an eye out for this one, Chris. We gotta keep our peepers open. Paul Cartier made his comic book debut in the Incredible Hulk issue 162. Yes, that rhymed. The Wendigo is a result of an ancient curse from the elder gods of Canadian folklore, and it transforms anybody who eats human flesh into this massive fur-covered beast, so don't eat flesh. It's been referred to as an indestructible force of nature being made from the gods and all. Now this all began when two Canadian lads were in the wilderness hunting, and then when wolves attacked and wounded one of the men, he ended up passing away from the attack, and his buddy was really hungry. He was starving, so he kind of sort of had to eat his friend's skin to survive. Yuck, but also you have to, man, it's part of it. Thus turning him into this Wendigo. Now it took Wolverine's help for the Hulk to take the Wendigo down, and just the origin story alone for this guy, I don't think we'll be seeing humans eating other humans in the MCU anytime soon, or if we do, hopefully it's Marvel Zombies. Either way, I'm not ready for that yet. Number 1, the Maestro. I know that name sounds cool, but this guy is an absolute nightmare to be around. He is not a conductor of classical music, no. In the series Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect, we see this version of the Hulk way more weird than Smart Hulk dabbing. Yeah, even weirder than that. He made his first appearance in a vision in the Incredible Hulk Volume 2 issue 401, and Maestro was the main antagonist in the Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect storyline. Now this story of course takes place about 100 or so years in the future after a nuclear war put the planet super close to extinction. Now this alternate future version of the Hulk, Maestro, had been absorbing all of the nuclear radiation this entire time, and he ended up becoming the strongest thing on the planet. Massive increases in strength and anger plus the brains of Banner made him arguably unstoppable. He's big, smart, strong, and a total nightmare to be around. I mean, maybe we could get some sort of future imperfect storyline, but I feel like it's way too dark for Disney. But hey, never say never.
Number 10, Volcanica. Volcanica only appears in a few issues, but she is a pretty hot villain. Literally hot, that is. She rules the caverns of the rocky world beneath the Earth's crust. She first appears in issue 106 of Invincible, where she aims to make Darkseid her consort, turning him into a lava being and titling him the King of the Underworld. She and Darkseid then head out to try and conquer the surface world together. Their first battle ends with their retreat, but they at least got what they came for. Volcanica isn't just a lava elemental, but also rules the cavernous subterranean area of Earth, and all of its creatures that live there as well. Number 9, Monax. Monax is the son of Monster Girl and Zal Zaxel of Flaxen royalty. Zal was his mother and Monster Girl his father. Monster Girl and Zal conceived the child together while Amanda was in her male monster form. In case you were wondering how that worked. Monax came to Earth with the Flaxen Empire in an attempt to conquer it years after, in his dimension, Monster Girl and Robot had left. Not knowing that Monster Girl had a child with Zal and seeking to protect the peace that they had created during their time in the Flaxen Dimension, Robot, before they left, ordered all Zaxels and their relatives to be killed to prevent an uprising from ever happening. However, this obviously was not how that went down. Zal was killed, but Monax survived, returning to Earth to get his revenge on his father and on Robot for what they had done to him, the Zaxels, and the Flaxen Empire. And friends, if you are loving this list and you want more Invincible lists, more, let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, Omnipotus. Omnipotus was a global level threat that took all of Earth's heroes teaming up to defeat. Omnipotus came from another world and dimension where he had drained his home of all of its energy. Omnipotus came to Earth to feed on more energy to give him even more power. He almost succeeded too, but in the end, Black Samson awoke, rejuvenated, and restored. With his powers returned and at a higher level than previous due to his time spent comatose, Black Samson pushed Omnipotus back through his warp gate, sending him back from whence he came, and then destroyed his warp key so that Omnipotus could never return. However, Omnipotus would later return as a villain and fight Invincible and Dinosaurus. Dinosaurus would defeat him and ultimately destroy him. Omnipotus kinda reminds me of Marvel's Galactus. Does anyone else get that vibe? Number 7, Anissa. Initially, Anissa is an ally of the Viltrumite Empire, and because of that reason is an enemy of Invincible and of Earth. She initially shows up and attempts to convince Mark to join the Empire and help them to conquer Earth. Mark, however, is not really interested in this plan and refuses to help her or the Viltrumite Empire. Later on, Anissa returns with Thrag, or Throg, depending on how you want to say it, and attempts to live in secret on Earth to help the Viltrumites rebuild their population by mating with humans. However, Anissa cannot find a suitable mate and also shares that she never really wanted to procreate to begin with. She assists in defeating Throg when she finds out that Omni-Man is the true heir to the Viltrumite Empire, but she also ends up seeing Mark as a potential mate, despite the fact that Mark at this point is with Eve. Anissa doesn't care, and she even forces herself on Mark, leaving him traumatized for many years, unable to even reach out and really tell anyone what happened to him for a long time. Years later, Anissa returns to Earth to help them when Throg's children come to attack. She is changed at this point and regrets what she did to Mark. However, her assault on him also produced a son, and that part she doesn't regret as she loves her and Mark's son, Marcus. Pretty complicated character and villain. Number 6, Evil Marks. When it comes to Invincible, who would be a stronger villain than Invincible himself? Or rather, multiple Invincibles. During the event of Invincible War, multiple Marks start appearing who are all from alternate realities and who are all evil. They have come to destroy Invincible physically and mentally, also destroying his reputation as a hero. In fact, that's kind of the main point of them being there. Many of these evil alternate versions of Mark end up dead following the events of Invincible War, but also costing the lives of many of Earth's heroes in the process. The remaining 8 end up being sent to a dead Earth reality, where the Earth there is filled with nothing but dust and hot sand. Stranded here with no food, they are forced to fight and consume one another for nourishment. In the end, only 2 evil Marks remain, Mohawk Mark and Yellow Cape Mark. Yellow Cape Mark could likely be considered the most powerful of all of the evil Marks, as while both have survived this far, Mohawk Mark is even frightened of Yellow Cape Mark. Number 5, Angstrom Levy. Angstrom Levy is really just a man who loves science, but unfortunately he saw Invincible as his opponent and nemesis due to a misunderstanding where he thought that Mark had actually interrupted an important and lifelong experiment in the process, leaving him injured. Levy then sought to destroy Mark because of this, and using his multi-dimensional knowledge and ability to travel to alternate universes using portals, he pulled together an army of evil Marks to help him. In the end, Mark would believe that he killed Levy, but would later learn that Angstrom had actually survived, being patched up by the technicians as well as given cybernetic enhancements that increased his power. Angstrom's weakness, though, would ultimately be his memory, as it wasn't actually Mark who had truly interrupted his experiment, but himself, who removed his multiversal device before his experiment had been complete, because Invincible had showed up but was actually about to die. Levy had actually removed the device not wanting Mark to be killed, that's why he took it off. This revelation would cause Angstrom to question all of his actions thus far and ultimately surrender to Invincible in the end, defeated by his own lack of memory. Number 4, Robot. While Robot might have the most heroic intentions, you cannot deny that in the end, he became a villain himself. In fact, he was only successful as a villain because his intentions were so heroic. His goal? World domination. But why would a hero strive for such an antagonistic goal? Because he knew if he were in charge and completely undisputed as the world's leader, that he could make changes that would greatly improve all lives on Earth. Robot is not actually an AI-powered android, he's a super genius who was originally malformed and unable to survive in the outside world until he created for himself a new, more stable body. He had got a taste for global leadership during his time stranded with Monster Girl in the Flaxen Dimension. Together, they conquered the Flaxen Empire and became its leaders. When they returned to Earth, Robot saw the possibility to turn Earth into a paradise in a similar fashion. But of course, there were many that he would have to get out of the way first. Number 3. Conquest. Conquest is one of the scariest villains out there. Why? Well, because his introduction shook up the narrative. For many, his arrival proved to be one of the scariest of all of the villains in the Invincible universe. This was a guy who enjoyed violence and fighting for the sake of it, and unlike Battle Beast, no fight was ever seen as below him, so he wasn't a villain who would give up. Conquest would fight to the point that his face was unrecognizable and would still come back for more. Initially, it appeared as though he'd killed Mark's partner and love, Adam Eve, which also gave us another shocking, jaw-dropping, fear-riddled moment. Not just for us as readers, but for Mark as Invincible as well. Don't worry, Eve's okay. Spoilers. Number 2. Battle Beast. Battle Beast is one of the most fierce and powerful villains around. His backstory starts off with him being a fearsome warrior and hero who himself was kind of like a guardian of his own planet. And after finding every opponent he came up against disappointing, he decided to leave and traverse the galaxy in search of someone who would be worthy enough to face him in battle, and ideally best him. Every world he went, he brought destruction and death to, unable to find the perfect nemesis. No one was strong enough to beat or to defeat him, including Earth's own heroes, who almost died trying. Would Battle Beast ever find someone who was worthy of battling him? Would Battle Beast ever find love? I'm just kidding, he doesn't want to love his nemesis. Although I'm sure there's an element. I feel like there might be an element there. Number 1. Throg. Thrag or Throg or however we're gonna say it. We'll know when he shows up in the animated series. I like the way Throg sounds, so I'm gonna go with that. But if you say Thrag, that is totally cool. Throg has to be up there as one of the most all-time powerful villains, not just in Invincible, but maybe in comics in general, especially in terms of a one-on-one battle. Throg was the villain to defeat one of the strongest villains in the world and lived to tell the tale of it. He ended up fighting Battle Beast, and after days of fighting and both of them being disemboweled, won. Now, of course, Battle Beast did choose to fight disemboweled due to Throg becoming disemboweled during the interim of their fight. But Throg also had to fight like that, and even defeating a disemboweled version of Battle Beast is very impressive. Because hey, that guy is nuts! Throg took Battle Beast's fur, or his coat, or his skin after the fight and had it turned into like a cape to remind him of his awesome victory. He wore it.
Kicking off the list at number 10. Kang the Conqueror. Also known as Nathaniel Richards, Kang the Conqueror is actually already cast in the live-action MCU, with Jonathan Majors set to play him in Ant-Man 3. But who is Kang? Why is this such a big deal? Well, he made his first appearance in Avengers issue 8 back in 1964, and Kang has seen many centuries. His powers allow him to travel through time, and his futuristic suit of armor is built with weapons that can take on pretty much any superhero. He's insanely smart, and of course he travels with armies, hence the toughness behind them. Now, these armies are built in a similar fashion sense, each warrior equipped with the same armor and weaponry. The time travel stuff doesn't come without consequence though, as Kang travels more and more through time. He creates time-displaced duplicates. And as we saw in Avengers Endgame, it can be quite tricky to figure out how to fix time. I think this is the perfect time to introduce a time-hopping villain, especially for Ant-Man, who's now a big-time Avenger who's been around the quantum block a few times. What do you guys think Kang's goal is going to be in Ant-Man 3? Do you think he's going to clean up these timelines, or do you think he's just pissed off and now he wants to just attack anybody who's messed with the quantum realm? Let us know what you guys think in the comments. We love hearing your feedback as well. And before we head on over to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give us a thumbs up on this video, that would help out a lot at the studio. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching, and let's keep on going with this list. Number 9, the Magus. Making his comic book debut in New Mutants issue 18, the Magus is a powerful enemy of Adam Warlock. He travels alongside Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy comic books, and in one of the many after-credit scenes for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Adam Warlock's name was briefly mentioned. Now this is important because the Magus is actually an enemy of Adam Warlock. He's a tyrant and a god, and now he appears as a ghostly form because, well, he's an evil version of Adam Warlock from the future. Crazy. So Adam Warlock was created by the Enclave when they were trying to create these perfect invincible beings. They created Adam, and we see this in one of those after credit scenes where she goes, "I shall name him Adam." And then everyone in the theater knows what's coming, they know what's coming up. It was exciting, it was a big moment. So Adam, during his travels, runs into the oppressive Universal Church of Truth and their god being the Magus. He was then shocked to see that the Magus is a dark, twisted version of himself, obsessed with the Infinity Stones, much like Thanos' desire. So could we see Adam come out of his glowing birthing pod and stir up some more Infinity Gem madness in the MCU? Yes, let's hope so. I think if the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 wasn't delayed or pushed on to later, we would have seen this already in motion, maybe in WandaVision. Number 8. Taskmaster. He's the big bad villain coming with the Black Widow movie, which we're still eagerly awaiting for. But just who is this hooded, shadowy fighter from the trailers? Taskmaster made his comic book debut back in Avengers 195. Anthony Masters, he is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, of course, who turned into a mercenary and assassin. And his whole thing that makes him special is that he can replicate your physical skills. He has this photographic reflex memory. So we can watch a video of Black Widow take down some evil henchmen and then bam, he's got it locked into his brain. He knows that choreography. He became a teacher based out of the Taskmaster's Academy to train villains, agents, henchmen, and even some heroes. He learned how to twirl a lasso by watching Cowboys on TV, and he learned how to play basketball by watching the NBA. He's kind of amazing. And he chose to be a villain instead of being an NBA superstar. What a clown. He's quite impressive. I mean, most Hydra agents, AIM troopers, Hellfire Club enforcers, and other big bad groups, they all most likely graduated from the Taskmaster Academy for Henchmen. And I'm super excited to see him in action in Black Widow. I'll gladly wait longer and longer and longer just so I can see him in IMAX hucking a shield. It's gonna be so worth the wait. Mwah. Number 7, Scarlet Witch. No more mutants. The 3 words that changed everything. So Scarlet Witch, okay, we're all counting down the days until the next episode of WandaVision because now it's cooking. Because now we can finally see an evil Wanda Maximoff. More evil than when she was in Ultron. We don't count that. She's the daughter of Magneto and the twin brother of Quicksilver, aka Pietro Maximoff. Now, she was on her father's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but at one point she did, of course, join the Avengers. She's one of the biggest Marvel characters ever, and during the events of M-Day, she spoke those 3 words, and just like that, a mass amounts of mutants were depowered or killed. So after she said those 3 words, that large number that ended up being affected was somewhere around 986,000 people, only leaving a couple hundred mutants left. Now, with the last 2 episodes of WandaVision sneaking up, it's more than likely that we'll see Wanda lean into this villain part. I mean, she's already expanded the Hex to a much larger scale, and now everybody's trapped prepping for the circus, eating swords, talking to the camera, the whole sitcom life, living up the hashtag sitcom life, you know? Tyler Hayward at one point in a previous episode asks if Wanda has a Avengers alias, but they make it very clear that she doesn't. This is almost to remind the audience that she hasn't got a cool nickname yet. So when the name the Scarlet Witch comes in, that'll be a big deal because that'll be her being marked as a villain with the name Scarlet Witch. With this whole Agatha Harkness witch stuff coming into play, I think we're very close to seeing Wanda flip to the dark side. At least for a little bit until Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness comes out, and then they have to make her not evil and help out and stuff. It's gonna be a whole thing. This is just a start. Number 6, Morgan Le Fay. Medieval witches and alternate timelines. I mean, that should say enough right there. She made her first appearance in the Black Knight issue 1 back in 1955. And Morgan Le Fay is based off of the Arthurian legend, so she's got a little bit of King Arthur, a little bit of evil magic, and 100% reason to remember the name. She's tried to rule the world many times, specifically after the events of Onslaught, where the Avengers go to an alternate Earth, and when they get back in Heroes Reborn, The Return, we have this new world filled with mythical creatures, of course being ran by Morgan Le Fay. Yeah, she got her hands on the Norn Stones and then made Scarlet Witch add her magic to the fun mix as well. So maybe we'll see that come to play as well. We got a lot of playing room with Scarlet Witch and witchcraft and all that magical stuff. It's gonna be crazy. Number 5, the Kree Skrull Empire. They made their comic debut in Fantastic Four issue 2 back in 1962. A lot of twos in there. And they made their Marvel Cinematic debut only a couple years ago in Captain Marvel. But who are the Skrulls? Well, they're a race of shapeshifters from the Andromeda Galaxy, and they look like green humans almost, except much more powerful and ferocious. They lived on the homeworld of Skrullos in the Drak system, and I loved watching these guys in Captain Marvel. They were a lot of fun, and it was nice to see them actually not be the main villain in the movie. Usually we have these evil gods or these crazy insane robots, but to see the villains of that movie end up wanting just the same chances of survival as humans made it more touchy, more emotional. You know, they're carrying around kids, just looking after their own. Like, it's nice. It was a nice change of pace. Even for a fake out, it was still rewarding. It was still fun. So yeah, they're expert shapeshifters. They can transform into anything, organic or non-organic, as long as it's solid. They can't adapt to superpowers unless you're a super Skrull, which, I mean, those guys you don't want to play around with. The Kree-Skrull War is amongst one of the biggest threats to the Avengers because they both believe that the Earth is theirs to claim. See, the Kree performed experiments on humans millennia ago, and then they actually caused the creation of Inhumans. And the Skrulls just see Earth as their new homeworld since theirs was destroyed by Galactus. So a good comic to check out with them would be the 1974 storyline, The Kree-Skrull War by Roy Thomas. Avengers 89 to 97. Number 4, Doctor Doom. Making his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 5, Victor Von Doom likes to go head to head with the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. He's one of the most popular Marvel villains ever, and he's not easy to forget. Just by looking at him, he's one of the coolest guys, I think. He thinks he's right. He thinks that he'll actually do a good job ruling the world. I mean, he's so smart, maybe he's correct. Maybe he could do it, but he's kind of evil, so we don't want to see it get to that point. He is the ruler of the land Latveria, and he really cares about this place in Fantastic Four 246. We see this compassion come to play in full force. So why the taste for ruling? Where did this all start, right? Well, each supervillain has their own path, and for Victor, that path started turning to the dark side before he was even born. You see, his mother was a Latvian woman, and she liked to get close to demons. I mean, perhaps a little too close. And after Victor was born, she would attempt to tap into these demonic powers herself, and her clan didn't like that, so they took her out. Sad stuff. So him and his dad were like, okay, see ya, this place sucks, we're out of here. Sadly, during this escape, his dad ended up freezing, and then he had to go on by himself as just a young boy. Then he figured he'd try this demonic power tapping himself later on in life, and then with no luck, he turned to his brain power, and then he soon met Reed Richards when he was in school. So that sad origin plus the college hazing, I mean, this is a villain backstory in the making. Number 3, Loki. Arguably one of the finest characters of the MCU, Loki is the adoptive son of Odin, but who are his real parents? Who is he? What is he doing? Why is he like this? Well, Loki was left as a baby. He was abandoned in his homeworld of Jotunheim, and during a battle, Odin had found this lost child and took him on as his own. What a sweet man, what a sweet gentle giant. So we see this play out in the first Thor movie back in 2011. And then when Loki finds out his motives are peddled by being the offspring of an evil frost giant, he gets a little upset, naturally. He always felt different growing up and often looked down on Thor as he got the most attention and love. Must have been those curly blonde waves. I mean, come on. Odin had chosen not to tell Loki about his true heritage, and he raised him as one of his own. And he's the villain that we love to hate. I'm honestly super excited to see the God of Mischief hop around time in the Loki show coming up. We can't get enough Tom Hiddleston as this role, and I'll happily wait week after week to see him cause more MCU mischief. Happily. Number 2, Ultron. In the MCU, Tony and Bruce are the masterminds behind Ultron, but in the comics, it was actually Hank Pym. Ultron made his first debut back in 1968 in Avengers 54, and beneath the Crimson Cowl, we discover that he is indeed Ultron Pym. See, in the comics, Hank Pym was actually the father of Ultron. There are many versions of Ultron, seeing as he constantly wants to upgrade himself to be bigger and badder. He actually has the same brain patterns as Hank Pym, so he figured it needed a personality, much like our MCU version of Ultron is basically Tony Stark, but with jealousy issues and a lot more metal. A good example of his ruling comes from the Age of Ultron from 2013. Like right off the bat, we can see a dark, life-drained world, and Spider-Man wakes up like, what'd I miss? Ultron is attacking from the future. That's how ahead of the game he is in this comic. And I can't lie, I was really excited for the Age of Ultron movie in the MCU. Like the trailer made him seem so dark and ominous. Even his voice was badass. And then in the movie, he just sounds like normal James Spader and he just walks around talking about omelets. There's rumors that he'll return for WandaVision, but I mean, maybe it's best to leave him in 2015, at least for a bit longer. And finally, number 1, Thanos. You know who this guy is, come on. We first saw him in the after credit scene of Avengers 1 and 2, and then we saw him sitting down in Guardians of the Galaxy, and then we saw him snap away half of all life in the universe in Avengers Infinity War. The Mad Titan first made his comic book debut back in Iron Man issue 55. Funny enough, Robert Downey Jr. is 55 years old, so just a coincidence, literally just a coincidence. So we all know how powerful Thanos is with the Infinity Gauntlet, but if you still haven't seen the movie, I'll touch briefly on those. But look, without the Gauntlet, Thanos is still a villain you don't want to mess around with. He is still a Mad Titan. He was born on the Saturn moon Titan, both of his parents were Eternals, and due to the genetic disorder known as the Deviant Syndrome, his mother actually tried to take him out at first sight. So he's got a pretty dark history already. He got payback when he took out his entire family just to impress Death. And then in the opening of Avengers Infinity War, we see Thanos level the Hulk without even using a single stone. That's how strong this guy is. He just, right in the neck, you're done. But then once he gets the 6 Infinity Stones, he has control over each cosmic power. Those of course being soul, time, power, reality, space, and mind. Now after he snapped his fingers and half of all life disappeared, in the comics he does this to get the attention of Death. But in the movie he does so to be a savior, because you know, too many mouths to feed, not enough to go around. I mean, you could just snap some Cinnamon Toast Crunch into everybody's home. That would be a great start, Thanos. Just an idea.
Number 10, the Joker. While the Joker is admittedly just a man, he obviously needs to at least make the cut because, you know, Batman is also just a man, but a powerful one. And while Joker has no superpowers to speak of, unless maybe we count his insanity, or his 100% sanity, depending on what you're reading, but even without any true superpowers of his own, the Joker is still the perfect foil for the extraordinary man that is Bruce Wayne and Batman. If there is anyone who has taken Batman close to the precipice when it comes to losing himself to the darkness within, it is the Joker. Batman has been tormented on countless occasions by the Joker, and the Joker has succeeded in his plans to do so multiple times, usually in ways that hurt Batman through doing harm to those he cares for, such as when he brainwashed Tim Drake, shot and paralyzed Barbara Gordon, or when he killed Jason Todd. Number 9. Hush. While Hush might not be a villain who gets many wins, he's still one of the most passionate when it comes to his desire to completely obliterate Batman, and it's for that reason that Hush makes our cut. Hush is Thomas Elliot, one of Bruce Wayne's childhood friends, hell-bent on destroying him in adulthood due to his jealousy. Hush doesn't just have that personal connection with Bruce to give him an edge in comparison, he's also managed to manipulate other villains besides, using them as pawns in his own sinister plans to take down Batman and literally proving himself better than them as shown in the War Games storyline. And before we move on to the next number, if you are enjoying this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really does help us out, my friends, and thank you for those who have already done so. Number 8. Talon. There have been more than a few villains who have held the mantle of Talon, among them one of the deadliest being William Cobb. The Talons are the assassins of the Court of Owls who can regenerate and reawaken after years of slumber, seemingly returning from the dead. William Cobb is one of the most seemingly successful among their ranks. He is revealed to be the great-grandfather of Dick Grayson, Nightwing, and to have been responsible, apparently, for the deaths of multiple members of the Wayne family throughout the years. Number 7. The Penguin. The Penguin is not just known as the odd man out in his own origins, but also seems to often be the odd man out here at Top 10 Nerd when it comes to our lists, which is why I thought it was so important to include him here. The Penguin is one of the Batman's oldest villains who has managed to stick around and resurface throughout the years. While he's usually remained more of a supporting criminal role when it comes to more recent Batman history, the Penguin, aka Oswald Cobblepot, has also remained one of Batman's most wealthy foes who uses his money to wreak havoc and create limitless gadgets and weapons, similar to Bruce Wayne himself. It's both his wealth and his knowledge of the criminal underground that make him such a powerful opponent. His ability to manipulate the criminal underworld of Gotham and bend it to his will while also remaining a public figure takes a different kind of strength. Honestly, I would love to see someone like the Penguin return to the spotlight once more as one of Batman's top villains. Number 6. Arkham Knight. Arkham Knight was a villain who posed a pretty huge threat to Batman in the Batman Arkham Knight 2015 video game. He was a frightening foe who had the wits and wealth to get his hands on and reverse engineer many of Batman's gadgets, to essentially put himself on the same level of power as Batman. In the end, the reveal for this character was somewhat disappointing as we learned that Arkham Knight was actually Bruce's former ward and sidekick, dun dun dun, Jason Todd. Jason ended up abandoning his plot to get revenge on Batman, but but if he hadn't, he likely would have destroyed both Batman and Gotham in his role as the Arkham Knight. Number 5. Ra's al Ghul. Ra's is known for being one of Batman's most deadly foes and one who is constantly matching and even threatens to beat Batman at times. While Batman is the master of planning with all his contingencies, Ra's has also managed to use this to his advantage, like during the Tower of Babel storyline when he hacked into Batman's files and used his perfect plans for his own machinations to neutralize the Justice League. In Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins, Ra's, played by Liam Neeson, also proves how destructive he can be when it comes not just to Batman, but to all of Gotham, as Ra's al Ghul pushes the city to the brink of insanity, encouraging it to tear itself apart from his own influence and impending threats. Number 4. Deathstroke. Deathstroke is one of the most powerful villains for any hero that he comes up against. Slade Wilson is one of the deadliest assassins in the entire DC universe, and when he comes up against Batman, you can bet he'd kill him if contracted to. Deathstroke most recently took out Batman in a fight near the beginning of the Joker War story arc. He left Batman for dead, and Batman was almost wiped out as a result of his attack when combined with confronting the Joker. And let's not forget that Deathstroke wasn't even contracted to kill Batman here, so this wasn't even Slade at his most willful or powerful. He was holding back in that fight. His only aim there was to basically put Batman out of commission for a short while. Number 3. Bane. If we are talking about physical power, then it's gotta be Bane, and perhaps even mental power too. While the Harley Quinn animated series gives us a version of Bane who is not quite as bright and is kind of a lovable oaf, in the comics, Bane is also known for being a genius in addition to his physical prowess. Bane grew up in prison and used most of his time to get fit and study at the prison library as much as he could. When we think of Bane, we usually think of the man who literally took Batman out of commission for quite a while in the comics when he broke his back over his knee during Nightfall, prompting Batman to recruit Azrael John Paul Valley to take over for him in his absence. Number 2. Poison Ivy. Ivy is usually one that gets dismissed when it comes to Batman's most powerful villains, but let's not forget that she can control plants the world over, meaning in essence, she can take control of the world pretty much whenever she wants. During Tom King's run, we saw Ivy get her moment in the spotlight, proving just how dangerous she could be when she decided to take over the entire world and every person on it through plants. Ivy controls the beings of planet Earth, including powerful superheroes like Superman, through veggies that they have consumed as well. Eventually, Batman and Catwoman find a way to get through to Ivy, but this was also during a phase where Poison Ivy was basically slowly transitioning into a reluctant hero role. Imagine if Ivy had really been full out supervillain at the time, and if Batman didn't have Harley Quinn to help him get through to Pam. Number 1. Emperor Joker. You didn't really think I was gonna let Joker rest so low on this list, did you now? Granted, this point could also technically be combined with Superman villain known as Mr. Mixia's Pitlick, who gave Emperor Joker his powers during that story arc. However, Mr. Mixie isn't really a Batman villain, but Joker is, and when he tricked Mr. Mixie into giving him 99.99% of his power, he ended up becoming one of the most powerful villains ever to take on Batman. In fact, after the events of torturing Batman in his newly reconstructed version of reality, Batman was left a broken man when everything was reverted back to normal afterward, completely traumatized by the experience. Superman literally had to take Batman's memories of this event in order to fix him and make him well enough once more to resume his heroic duties. Number 10. Stunner. Angelina is one we all forget. She was for a time the devoted and loyal ally and girlfriend to Otto Octavius, who used his smarts to create virtual reality tech that allowed Angelina to live through a virtual form, an avatar who was stronger and that Angelina considered was more attractive in comparison to her true biological form. She got knocked into a coma for years following an explosion, and when she awoke years later, she learned that Otto had died, though really Otto had moved his consciousness into Peter's body, becoming Superior Spider-Man. She swore revenge on Spider-Man, not knowing this, and once again took her virtual form of Stunner. Sadly, she was later defeated when her tech was disabled, and Superior Spider-Man created a virtual version of Otto to break up with Angelina. Number 9. Chameleon. One of the Spider-Man villains who I think deserves more recognition is the Chameleon. He's not only a great and powerful Spider-Man villain, but is also one of the coldest ones around, making his first appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 1. He's been here since the beginning, baby! Dmitry Smerdyakov is also related to another powerful Spider-Man villain, Kraven the Hunter. Chameleon is in fact Kraven's half-brother. Where Kraven brings strength and hunting prowess to the table as a villain, Dmitry brings intrigue, his intellect, and originally his technology, which was responsible for him being able to transform so perfectly into any person he wished to impersonate. Later on, however, this power was later changed to instead be a power granted through an experimental treatment. He's also been known to slowly kill his victims in an acid bath, and it is their cries for help that helps him to perfect his mimicry of their voice. Number 8. Sandman. One of the most powerful villains around, especially as he can turn into and manipulate sand, just as long as there are no vacuums around for him to get trapped in, which is a thing that has happened in the comics before. Seriously, you can check it out in the original run of The Amazing Spider-Man in issue number 4. Though thankfully years later that was retconned to be a choice and not a weakness of Sandman's. So in reality, no, vacuums aren't that dangerous to the villain, who can not only reduce himself to tiny and deadly particles of sand which he can control, but who can also harden himself to be as tough as a very thick and solid rock face. Sometimes I just think, listen to what you're saying, Amanda. When you wrote that, people are definitely gonna be like, would you just say he can harden himself? But I mean his body, his form, okay? Get your minds out of the gutter. Sandman is powerful because of all he can accomplish in his sandy form, and all he can withstand. He's also played not only the part of a powerful villain and member of the Sinister Six, but has also been a powerful ally to Spider-Man at times as well. Number 7. Kingpin. When it comes to strength and influence, Kingpin is one of the best out there. I mean, or should I say the worst? He's one of the worst! When you think Kingpin, you might think of Daredevil when it comes to his greatest enemy. But although Spider-Man might not be his number 1, Kingpin has still been terrorizing the webhead in addition to Matt Murdock since the Silver Age. In fact, Kingpin made his very first appearance in the Amazing Spider-Man comic issue number 50 in 1967. How about that? Kingpin is not only physically strong, but is also known for being a criminal mastermind with enough influence that even locking him up can't stop him. He's just got that much clout and that many connections. Number 6. Rhino. One of the Spider-Man villains that we often forget but who is exceedingly strong is Rhino, Alexei Saitsevic. He himself is a hard hitter in Marvel Strike Force though, so if you are working on that Sinister Six build, then he might be one of the first to come to your mind when we talk about powerful Spider-Man villains. Rhino got his powers from exposure to a combination of gamma radiation and chemicals. This granted him super strength, and while he's often depicted as being not quite one of the brightest of all the villains, he still packs quite the punch with or without his Rhino armor. I gotta say though, when I think of Rhino, I still think of him first as a guy who looks like he's running around the city in a Rhino onesie like in the 60s Spider-Man cartoon. Number 5. Carnage. I was actually tempted to put Carnage even higher on this list because he's just so powerful. Cletus Kasady might be dead inside, literally. Cletus Kasady might be dead inside, but he still managed to live on throughout the absolute Carnage story arc and become reinvented as an even more terrifying villain once bonded to the Grendel symbiote, becoming not just Carnage, but Dark Carnage. And yeah, he was ultimately defeated, but hey, what a ride it was. Carnage not only terrorized Venom, aka Eddie Brock, and his son Dylan, but he also managed to kick the butt of both Spider-Men, both Peter Parker and Miles Morales. Let's also not forget that when Carnage first appeared, raining down destruction and chaos in the comics, Spider-Man also needed to team up with Venom to even stand a chance against the villain. Number 4. Norman Osborn. While Norman Osborn might not be the most physically powerful of all Spider-Man's opponents, he is definitely one of the most powerful in terms of influence and genius. One of the most influential villains of all time for sure. Norman Osborn has definitely caused Peter and many adjacent loved ones and allies the most grief and pain over time. Norman is also so powerful that he moved from being solely a Spider-Man villain to an Avengers villain and really kind of an all-heroes villain during the Dark Reign storyline, which is pretty impressive. Number 3. Morlun and the Inheritors. Now I know some people are not going to like me putting Morlun this high on the list because I know there are some out there who detest both him and the Inheritors, but I truly believe that he deserves this spot along with his family of alternate dimension Victorian energy vampires. Yeah, I said it, they're kinda weird, but so what? I personally think that that's always been part of the charm of both Spider-Man and Batman's rogues galleries, and what makes them both superheroes who have some of the best villains out there. They got a lot of weird villains, Morlun notwithstanding. Morlun is an energy vampire who, along with his family, not only threaten the life of Peter Parker, but just about every other Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and any other spider folks out there. He also showed up in the Spider-Man story The Other and proved not just how deadly he was, but how cruel he was as well, which in terms of ranking powerful Spider-Man villains should earn him bonus points, as those two seem to go hand in hand. Cruelty usually comes with power in these stories. Number 2. Null. Null is coming, and he's not just coming for Venom, he's coming for everyone this time around. Still, originally Null was a cosmic god and villain intrinsically tied to Venom in the comics, and he was asleep, so he was a villain who not everyone had to worry about, cause you know, he was snoring. But Null being a Venom villain means that he is therefore part of the Spideyverse in comics, as Venom comes from Spider-Man comics originally. All in all, Spider-Man's world just keeps growing and expanding every year, especially as more and more are getting that additional symbiote fever. Null is known as the first god of the Abyss, the god of darkness and symbiotes. He is the creator of symbiotes, and we've watched here and there as now that he is awake, he's racing across the galaxy, raising planets and bringing darkness wherever he goes. He's heading for Earth, and he's likely going to end up being one of the greatest threats Spider-Man, Venom, and all of our Marvel heroes have ever faced. Number 1. Mephisto. Mephisto is one of the most epic Spider-Man villains and is definitely one of the most powerful ones around. Mephisto is a universal constant and has the power to do things like alter history. He saved Miles' friends in exchange for one life that Miles had previously saved. He saved Aunt May in exchange for erasing Peter's marriage from existence. He basically is this all-powerful being that, for almost no conceivable reason, is just super obsessed with spider folks. I swear, I think he just actually wants to be their best friends, but he just doesn't know how because he's like super awkward, so instead he bullies and torments these heroes. Mephisto likely just needs more hugs, but he's still one of the most powerful villains around. Hey, even powerful villains need love.
Number 10. Parasite. First appearing in Firestorm Volume 2 in 1987, Parasite is a twisted, energy-sucking, vampire-like beast who feeds on energy to live. He absorbs the life force of mortals, leaving behind a withered, empty husk. Originally, his need to absorb was satiated with regular civilians, but up against a foe like Superman, his absorption also allows him to sap the powers and memories of his victims. This means he absorbs Superman's powers, but also becomes more deadly every time he goes up against the superhero. He also keeps the knowledge he absorbs during these encounters, meaning he is aware of Superman's secret identity. One interesting aspect of his power, he can only sustain a certain amount of superpowers at one time, or else previous powers will be disabled. This process causes him to go through body changes and power fluctuation. You know, like when you teach a new move to your Pokemon. If that wasn't enough, in his early origin he had a wife and family he could never touch again, adding a tragic emotional element to this epic villain. Number 9. Metallo. John Corbin was a critically injured man saved from death by a scientist named Emmett Vale in an experiment that turned him into a cyborg. The scientist was obsessed with the idea that Superman was leading an alien invasion, so when he happened across to John, dying from injuries sustained in a car crash, he takes him back to his lab and he puts his brain into a cyborg body powered by uranium. He then tasks him with killing Superman, and John becomes Metallo, named after the alloy his new form is made with. The uranium core is later replaced with a kryptonite heart to help him kill Superman. With the ability to shoot destructive kryptonite blasts, Metallo knows how to keep Superman busy. At one point, he sells his soul to a demon to upgrade his powers even further. He has incredible abilities granted by his cybernetic body, including enhanced senses and accelerated probability, allowing him to perform quick maths, rapidly processing to predict the most probable outcome of any given situation down to the second. This dude has got a serious hard drive. Hey Nerd Squad, if you like our videos and you want to see more, please take a second to hit that like button, it really helps us out. Number 8. Mongol. Mongol first appeared in Adventures of Superman in 1989. He's an evil alien dictator, the tyrannical overlord of Warworld, an artificial satellite that travels the galaxy collecting slaves for gladiator-style combat tournaments. Superman is picked up and brought to Warworld, where he wins again and again until he's pitted up against Draga, the undisputed champion of Warworld. This place is crazy. It's like Rome mixed with WWE, and Superman is Stone Cold Steve Austin. After the Man of Steel Steel defeats the champ, Mongol is not pleased and he teleports down to face off against Superman himself. He eventually knocks Superman unconscious, but rather than instantly killing him while he has the chance, he chains Superman up and prepares to execute Draga, the former champ. Superman breaks out of his bonds and fights back, but Mongol almost blasts Superman into oblivion with his ray blaster on his chest. Superman is saved, however, when a mysterious being named Cleric teleports him off to safety. Mongol nearly defeats Superman, and that lands him here at our number 8 spot. Number 7, Bizarro. Alright, so one time the Joker possessed the 5th dimensional powers of Mr. Mixie, and he created his own insane version of Superman. I'm sure you've heard of him already. Bizarro is like a dark Superman, a shadow self or opposite version of the Man of Steel. The Man of Iron? No, it's already taken. He has mostly the same powers as Superman, except with Arctic vision instead of heat vision, and flame breath, and you get the idea. The original newspaper version of Bizarro included the iconic Bizarro speech patterns, with all Bizarro's comments meaning the opposite of what he says. Having nearly the same skills as Superman, he would be a pretty serious threat to Superman if it weren't for his inferior mind. The people of Bizarro World aren't the brightest. The Bizarro concept has spawned a lot of cool storylines for DC though. You're not a real DC superhero until you've got a Bizarro version of yourself running around. Funny story, Bizarro was once captured and tortured by General Zod, apparently only because he looks like Superman. Number 6, General Zod. Like Bizarro, General Zod is a similarly dark reflection of the Man of Steel. Zod has appeared many times, hell-bent on the destruction of Earth to rebuild Krypton. As a fellow Kryptonian, he has mostly the same powers as Superman, making him an enormous threat to Superman and to the world. He has appeared infrequently since the Crisis on Infinite Earths, a mind-bending event rewriting much of DC's entire history. Zod cares very little about others, including his own race. Everything he does is part of some masterful, self-serving evil scheme. If Superman were to turn evil and attempt to dominate the Earth, General Zod gives us a pretty good idea of what that might look like. Number 5. Darkseid. Darkseid is a tyrannical ruler, dread lord of the nightmare world Apocalypse. He exists outside the normal universe, in a realm known as the Fourth World. He has been called the God of Evil. His goal is no less than conquering all of creation and the entire multiverse. He seeks the anti-life equation, a power that will allow him to turn anyone into a mindless slave bound to him. He once kidnapped Supergirl, using black kryptonite to brainwash her into joining his all-women villain squad, the Female Furies, led by Granny Goodness, the cruel and evil lieutenant. Darkseid is one of the new gods from the Fourth World, who evolved in close proximity to a primeval energy along with superior technology and genetic stability. The people of this realm are immortal, stronger and faster than Homo sapiens, despite looking pretty much the same. Darkseid also wields an ability called the Omega Effect, allowing him to travel through time and space, as well as break barriers and force fields. His main power is his Omega Beam, energy blasts coming from his eyes that are capable of teleporting targets to another universe. He has complete control over his Omega Beams, and they can even change direction in the air. Number 4, Brainiac. Vril Dox, aka Brainiac, is an artificial intelligence created by the computer tyrants of Kolu, a world where knowledge and logic reign supreme. Brainiac was designed to conquer alien worlds, but he quickly became more and more intelligent, eventually becoming a villain that does whatever it takes to acquire more knowledge. He once shrunk down the entire city of Kandor into a miniature for himself to study. He also created a remote scout, programmed to think it was the original Vril Dox. This scout came to the Earth and took over the body of a mentalist named Milton Fine, who worked under the alias Brainiac. Generally believed to be the most intelligent being in the DC universe, he possesses a 12th level intellect, making him even smarter than Lex Luthor. Interestingly, he was once defeated in the past through a sensory overload. Superman forced him into Earth's atmosphere, and he became overwhelmed by the germs and microbes of the Earth, as well as the wild sights and sounds of human society. Number 3. Doomsday. Doomsday was created on Krypton in the distant past, long before Kryptonians had dominance over the planet. In this early day, Krypton was a violent hellscape where only the strongest creatures survived. Doomsday was created by a scientist named Bertrand, who was trying to create the ultimate life form. His first experiments failed, and the test subjects dying on Krypton. Bertrand cultivated cells, from the dead test subjects and infused them into the next one, repeating the process over 40 years. The life form possesses the genetic memory of its previous forms and therefore is immune to being killed in any way that it has died in the past. Unfortunately, this also resulted in the ultimate survivor becoming a relentless killing machine. Eventually, Doomsday confronts his creator and destroys him, escaping from the wastelands of Krypton. He has sharp, protruding bone claws and a whole host of superpowers, including most notably the ability to adapt to any attack. Doomsday and Superman once had a lengthy, violent fight in Metropolis that ended with what was assumed to be the death of them both. Number 2. Lex Luthor. Lex is undoubtedly one of Superman's greatest foes. A brilliant scientist and billionaire philanthropist, he is powerful and creative. He despises the Man of Steel for his alien heritage and considers him a threat to all of humanity. Over the years, Lex has been around, once even becoming president. He even had a position on the Justice League in the past. There's a genius dynamic between Lex and Superman, with Superman being an alien and achieving things that humanity never thought possible, and on the flip side, Lex Luthor is like peak human success. He's brilliant and rich and successful, but too arrogant and self-interested to use his gifts to benefit humanity. He was once reborn inside an immortal, half-Martian, half-human body, and in this form was known as Apex Lex, and was immensely powerful. Apex Lex can travel across infinite realities. He is vulnerable and nigh omnipotent, wielding the 7 dark energies of the universe. This guy was dangerous enough before. Luthor's combination of hatred towards Superman and near limitless power potential land him here at our number 2 spot. And now, number 1. Batman. Batman is a bit of a problem for Superman. Not only does Batman always carry kryptonite on him, just in case, but Batman is also the kind of dude who just does what he wants and is pretty hard to argue with. Batman and Superman have gone head to head many times in the past, with different results, but it's worth noting that Batman has defeated nearly every iconic comic character within recent years. It has also been said that Batman could defeat anyone given enough prep time. Similar to Lex Luthor, Batman is also a billionaire who isn't too thrilled about an alien flying around and destroying buildings with his superpowers. Superman versus Batman. These guys are two sides of the same coin. They want the same thing, but have very different ways of achieving it.
Number 10. Kraven the Hunter. Kraven on Earth 1610 is actually the star of a show, following him as he hunts down dangerous and exotic animals. He planned on hunting Spider-Man to improve his show's ratings, but was exposed as a fraud when Spider-Man handily defeated him with one punch. Obsessed with getting revenge on Spider-Man for costing him his reputation, his job, and apparently his wife, Kraven experimented on himself, transforming himself into a lion-like monster. Eventually, he would go on to join the Sinister Six and continue to try to fight and kill Spider-Man. Kraven is a skilled tracker, and after his experimentation had superhuman levels of strength, speed, and endurance, becoming a much more fearsome opponent. Much more fearsome. Number 9. Prowler. Prowler is an interesting villain because when Miles Morales was moved over to Earth 616 after the destruction of Earth 1610 and the amalgamation of the Marvel Universe into Battleworld, Aaron Davis, Miles' uncle, also survived. Aaron Davis used to be partners in crime with Miles' father, his brother, Jefferson. But after the birth of his son, Jefferson decided to go on the straight and narrow, while Aaron continued on with his criminal activities. Initially, Aaron died in Earth 1610 after attempting to blackmail and then kill his nephew, knowing of his true identity as Spider-Man. However, he also found himself returned to life when Miles was moved over to Earth 616. He woke up in bed as though his death had never happened. He would end up becoming a criminal again, recruiting the Sinister Six and fighting against his nephew once more. His antagonism would actually inspire the formation of the Champions. Eventually, though, Aaron would attempt to also give up his criminal ways, being convinced by his nephew that he could do better. And friends, if you love villains as much as I love villains, please show that love by giving this video a thumbs up. Seriously, when you hit that thumbs up or when you click the subscribe, it really does help us out, so thank you for doing it. Number 8. Black Widow. Black Widow was almost one of the most successful villains around. She played the role of hero so well, no one saw her betrayal coming, not even her fiancé Tony Stark. Yep, in this world, Iron Man and Black Widow end up romantically together. together. However, it's later revealed that this was all part of Black Widow's plan to betray the Avengers and steal Stark's fortune. Mwahaha. Instead of redeeming herself and becoming a hero, Black Widow here remains a villain through and through, and is just pretending to be a hero. She even kills Jarvis! Oh no! But in the end, Stark is able to use the nanotech in her blood, which allows her to control the suit that he made for her as a wedding gift to neutralize Black Widow. Though not in time to save Jarvis, sadly. Black Widow would get hers in the end when Hawkeye found out where she was being kept and killed her as revenge for her orchestrating the death of his family and his own capture and torture. Yeah, Black Widow is really bad in the Ultimate Universe. Number 7, Colonel. The Colonel was Abdul Al-Rahman. He was a super soldier just like Captain America and was actually a hero to his own nation. He was part of the Liberators, the same group of villains that Black Widow was allied with. Abdul's powers were comparable to Captain America, as he was also a super soldier. In fact, believed to be the first successful super soldier since the creation of Cap. The Liberators were considered a group of villains by the Ultimates and the USA, but were in reality a multinational group of superpowered beings who banded together in their hopes to even the playing field for the rest of the world by destroying the Ultimates. The depiction of these villains was extremely political, problematic, and even at times racist. But if you consider his motivations and his backstory, Abdul was actually a pretty cool character. To add likely to his evil but badass appearance, he also fought with what appeared to be a double-bladed, well, a lightsaber. Energy blades, I think they're called, that looked very similar to Darth Maul's. Because, you know, Darth Maul's a bad guy. So how do we make Abdul look like a bad guy? Give him the same thing that Darth Maul fights with. What is happening? It's the Star Wars Marvel superhero crossover that none of us necessarily asked for, but there you go. Number 6, Gregory Stark. Gregory Stark is the twin brother of Tony Stark. He has less morals than his brother and is a more focused intellectual. Whereas Tony is known for his lavish playboy lifestyle, Gregory is not. In fact, that is one of the many things that Gregory always hated about his brother. He is the older twin, being born 20 minutes before Tony, and is not only more amoral, but is also more intelligent than his brother. Initially, he worked for S.H.I.E.L.D., but this was all part of a carefully planned world domination plot involving in part the overthrowing of S.H.I.E.L.D. superiors, leading eventually to Gregory being put in charge as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Eventually, the Ultimates would learn of his plot and turn on him, defeating and killing him after the nanites in his bloodstream were disabled by his own brother, Tony. Number 5, Modi Thorson. Modi is the son of Thor and Hela. Don't worry, in Ultimates they're not related. Not brother and sister, nor uncle and niece. Still, it's kind of icky to imagine, but Thor was forced to sleep with Hela in order to give her a child, so that in exchange she would return him to Earth so that he could be with Valkyrie. Of course, this didn't end up working out exactly as Thor had planned, because Valkyrie ended up dying and then Thor ended up coming back, so they didn't really get to be together, but hey, good try. When Modi was a child, Thor locked him away for his own protection, but gave him Mjolnir so that he'd be able to escape when he was worthy. After escaping the room he was locked up in, now fully grown, Modi ended up using the Mind Gem to bend others to his will. His plan was to destroy the US and basically rebuild Asgard out of its charred remains, because at this point in time Asgard had fallen, there was no Asgard. Modi even managed to bend his father to his will, but was not successful in controlling the mind of Captain America. In the end, Thor broke free of his son's will and killed him. Number 4, Green Goblin. Of course, Norman Osborn needs to be near the top on this list because, well, he's Norman Osborn. But in the reality of Earth 1610, he's actually even more fearsome than his 616 counterpart. Norman got his powers after learning of the creation of Spider-Man through an Oz formula infected spider. Believing that it was the combination of the Oz formula and spider DNA that granted those spider-like abilities, Norman theorized that combining the Oz formula with his own DNA should just transform him into a more superior version of himself. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out how he planned, and instead, Norman found himself transformed into a demon-like version of himself. This version of Norman comes with super strength, speed, durability, and is virtually indestructible and immortal, in a way that's similar to the Hulk. Every time he dies, Osborn claims he is resurrected. Osborn would also eventually make his way to the universe of Earth 616. But how did he get there? Number 3, Ultimatum. Ultimatum is like the evil version of Miles Morales, but is actually the main continuity version of that character. While he isn't originally from Earth 1610, instead hailing from the Prime universe of Earth 616, Miles Morales did spend a good amount of time living on Earth 1610. And I mean, his current villain name is Ultimatum, so I feel like he kind of earned a place on our list. Miles was the one responsible for bringing the 1610 version of Norman Osborn to Earth 616, who works for him as his lackey, hence why Ultimatum is higher up on this list. Ultimatum himself doesn't have any superpowers, but does have quite a bit of influence, being an ally of Earth 616's Kingpin originally, and also possesses knowledge of the multiverse. I keep pointing to my head for knowledge. It's just like, yes, Amanda, we know this is where your brain is. We know. Ultimatum also has a pretty sweet suit. Like a supervillain suit, not like a tailored suit. His plan was to take over Brooklyn, make it his own criminal empire, and send the Miles Morales of Earth 1610, Spider-Man, and his family back to their home reality. Fortunately, his plan fell apart in issue 19 of Miles Morales Spider-Man, when he found out he was unable to capture Spider-Man's parents. They're not easy to capture, so I love that he was like, this will work fine. But Jefferson was like, no, get out of here. What are you trying to do? Get out of here. Number 2, Magneto. Speaking of Ultimatum. Okay, so while Green Goblin is immortal and Ultimatum is the boss of Green Goblin, and Magneto is, not necessarily immortal, definitely not immortal, he still has proven to be very deadly in the Ultimate Universe, and it is for that reason that he gets ranked so high up. Just the numbers of lives he took is shocking during, of course, Ultimatum. Magneto killed Professor Xavier and other notable mutant heroes who stood in his way. He killed millions of people worldwide before S.H.I.E.L.D. and the X-Men were able to finally track him down and put a stop to it. Magneto then learned that his beliefs about mutant kind were wrong, and that mutants were created from the hereditary genes passed on from the super soldier serum. They weren't like divine in any way. This broke Magneto, destroying everything he had built his cause around, making him question everything he had done, as he should. In the end, Cyclops killed Magneto, vaporizing him with a powerful optic blast. See? Not immortal. Number 1, the Maker. Likely one of the most powerful and brilliant villains to come out of the Ultimate Universe. Jonathan Hickman, if you're watching this, you know what I'm talking about. The Maker is also a fan favorite among comic book writers and readers, so it's easy to understand how he ends up accomplishing so much and becoming so gifted. When we like a character, we want them to do well. When we like a villain, we want them to do bad. Do bad things. To other people, that is. And the Maker in that way does not disappoint us. Initially, the Maker was known as Mr. Fantastic. He is the reimagining of Reed Richards if he were to turn to a life of villainy instead, which ends up happening after the Fantastic Four falls apart. Much of his power comes from his genius intellect and his fiercely and horrifically loyal dedication to the pursuit of knowledge and science. The Maker has his own modified symbiote, is virtually immortal, possesses a genius intellect, and still has his stretching powers. And he's done a lot of stuff.